Hell's Kitchen, a wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Hey, Matt, I live here. It's really not all that bad.
An absolute cesspool for the worst people imaginable.
I mean, I like some of the bars here. I don't know. Daredevil Born Again is about halfway through its second season, and some wild stuff just went down in the most recent episode.
Matt's back in a brand new, sick black costume that I actually have a personal story about because, believe it or not, I worked on this season in a very minimal role, but hey, still, I was there.
That's right. About a year ago, I was standing outside while Fisk was beating the shit out of this random dude in the boxing ring.
So whenever you watch season 2 and you see a scene where Matt and Karen are standing on the side of the street at night, just know that somewhere around the corner, John was freezing his ass off trying to protect the integrity of Daredevil Born Again. Usually just waving people away. It was hard work, but someone's got to do it.
So let's dive in and see how the return of Daredevil has gone so far. After a pretty shaky hodgepodge together Frankenstein of a first season, I think Season 2 started off much stronger than Season 1. If you remember, Born Again started out with this Bullseye action sequence resulting in Foggy's death, which, yeah, was a very consequential scene, and sets up where Matt and the gang are at for the start of the new series, but I think it's a pretty sloppy start to the show as a whole. The whole thing was just ugly. It was hard to tell what was going on with just so much shit in the way obscuring the action. Like, get the fuck out of the way. It just really put a bad taste in my mouth right off the bat. It gave off the vibe of like a really rushed reshoot. You know, shocking for the sake of shocking and just pumped full of this fog. Like, cool it with the fog machine, please, guys.
The whole show is covered in this friggin' fog. I'm like waving at my screen trying to clear the air. Can we get a fucking box fan in here? Maybe just turn the AC on. I'm trying to get some of this air moving.
And I felt bad because Charlie Cox is absolutely pouring his heart out on what should have been this huge emotional moment. But in my opinion, it had no weight because we haven't even been properly reintroduced to these characters yet. You know, we get like a 5-second montage right before all this shit goes down. It's just not enough. You know, it's like, oh, hey, we get to see the gang back together again. I wonder what everybody's up to. The whole thing almost felt like a dream sequence, way overproduced and trying too many things at once. And I don't know, just felt like a cheap gotcha moment to start the series off with. And in my opinion, lots of the first season felt like this. Weird 80-yard lines when characters were off screen, lots of tonal whiplash where the show couldn't decide if it wanted to be a fun superhero thing or a dark and gritty edgelord show
where everybody gets compound fractures and throws the F word around like it's prescription drugs in a high school bathroom. I mean, my God, this show throws out more fucks than a red light district. You get a fuck, everybody gets a fuck.
But as the season went on, it weirdly had a great final 2 episodes. It was almost jarring how the quality spiked in the finale. Getting some of our best interactions between Daredevil and Frank, some great action, and setting up a larger scope for the second season. It finally started forming its own identity beyond the Netflix show. Like, oh, this is what Born Again could be. Anyway, that first season ended up being the definition of a mixed bag, literally with them shooting 2 versions of the same season. You could feel it. But knowing the production issues that it went through and that it was a transitional time for Marvel in general, I was expecting them to go back to formula for Season 2, and so far, that's pretty much what they did. Season 2 starts out, and we are done fucking around. Matt is Daredevil. Matt and Karen are finally together. No more of this will they, won't they bullshit. That would have been nice to see on screen and get some resolution on, considering that I've watched these characters for 4 seasons, but you know, I'm just happy they're happy. Karen is fully back, no longer sidelined by new, uninteresting pastiches of her and Foggy, and I gotta say, I really missed Karen. Her and Matt's relationship feels very organic and natural. They have great on-screen chemistry, and they work way better together than the girlfriend they tried to give Matt in the last season. I like how involved Karen is in the daredeviling. She herself is a known vigilante now and is willing to risk it all for the cause. I will say, it is kind of funny how incongruous the whole story is with the overall MCU. Like in this show, all the superheroing has to be done from the shadows. All the characters have their hoods up, skulking around at night and hiding from an oppressive government. Kind of a weird vibe knowing that Spider-Man is swinging around and Captain America is flying somewhere. The new Avengers are based out of New York, right? But you know, nitpicks. Season 1 also got a lot of criticism because Matt and Fisk were so separated for a lot of the show, which I don't think in concept is a problem. It's just that the side characters were just uninteresting, with very few standouts, like Michael Gandolfini's Deputy Mayor Fisk, who I thought was great. Season 2 takes the characters that weren't working and either makes them more interesting or drops them completely. And the new characters they do introduce are way cooler. Matthew Lillard is here in all of his slimy, scummy glory. The character, not the actor. He seems like a very pleasant guy. And shows up to throw Fisk off his game in a new, fun way. He totally steals the show whenever he's on screen. And he's been used pretty sparingly so far, so I want to see more of him. Another thing is that, in my opinion, the visuals have pretty significantly improved. There are still hints of that weird over-the-top editing. I still hate every time the aspect ratio changes or whenever the camera calls attention to itself with a Dutch angle tilt. It's not very nuanced or subtle in what it's doing. Kinda first idea cinematography, you know? I still don't 100% love the look of the show. Lots of handheld scenes, blasting light and fog at you with shit always in the foreground. The whole thing feels like I'm trying to watch a scene after stuffing myself with a face full of narcotics. Like, just get the fuck out of my way. I want to watch the program. Another thing is I do kind of think the show lacks in any kind of moral complexity or any kind of nuance. The good guys are cartoonishly good, and the villains are cartoonishly evil, particularly these ATF agent guys, who look like they're about 2 seconds away from shooting a puppy. Oh wait, that was a real thing. So far we've got some great, more quiet moments that I think were almost entirely missing from the first season. There's a nice quiet moment between Karen and Matt here, mourning Foggy, but I think the show's strongest aspect by far, on top of the performances, is the action. The action and the fight choreography here is sick. Probably some of the best that Marvel's done in a long time. You know, like some of these less consequential fights are still some of the most brutal, and yet they all really know how to make Matt feel human. Like he's just a guy in a suit doing this who could be bested or killed at any time if he's off his game. There's a great moment here where he gets thrown off by this hostage guy who suddenly gets a heart attack, and that's enough to get Matt knocked off his feet and have these three guys just start wailing on him. But this most recent episode, called Gloves Off, the boxing one, is one of the ones that I actually worked a lot on. I was there for all of the boxing stuff. I saw Vanessa's death scene before it happened. I knew it was coming for a while now. And I do think it's the right time for the show to have a bit of a shakeup. Fisk has been just chilling in his status quo as the mayor for too long. And I'm excited to see an unhinged Fisk without Vanessa, something that's characterized him since the very first scene in the original show. Like, if we thought he was fucked up before, I can only imagine what a Fisk with nothing to lose looks like. That's terrifying. I think it was a great moment, but I do think the path getting there was a little messy. I think I have an issue with how the show is written at times, like Bullseye, for example. I think the writing for Bullseye is just so tryhard. I'm crazy! This action scene in the diner was super cool and really well choreographed, but they're just writing him like he's a generic psycho. You know, it feels pretty cliche.
You know, like they're just doing the No Country for Old Men thing. But look at this move. Sick.
But speaking of this episode, something I really liked was Matt going undercover as one of these agent guys, doing crime scene stuff in the day, using his powers in a unique way we haven't seen before. I think that's really cool. We need more of that. Another great aspect of this season that I do want to call out, because it's kind of not the norm for a lot of these superhero shows, is not just the suit itself, but the amount that Matt is in the Daredevil suit throughout the series so far. You know, like, even in the original show, it'd be a lot of Matt Murdocking and then maybe like 5-10 minutes an episode of him doing Daredevil stuff. But here, there are full dialogue scenes, like emotional moments where Matt is Daredevil. You know, like, he doesn't feel the need to whip off his mask every time he needs to give an emotional performance. That's something I really commend the show on. I don't see that as much as I'd like to. Going back to the writing for a sec, another thing is, correct me if I'm wrong, but Kingpin's plan seems kind of stupid and awful, no? Like, first of all, why is he doing this big dumb boxing match if he's so worried about how he looks to the public? Like, you could say, yeah, maybe it's an ego thing, maybe it's a power thing, he wants to look strong for his people, but he, like, just brought up in his previous scene with Matthew Lillard that how the public is perceiving him as a big issue right now. So to go, like, sending this dude into cardiac arrest is, like, maybe not a great look, but hey, I'm no political strategist. Maybe his approval rating will go skyrocketing after sending this dude to the hospital and potentially the grave. But anyway, maybe I'm missing something here, but he's setting a trap for Bullseye because he knows Bullseye's after him, right? But then why is he so happy to see Vanessa when she shows up if he knows he's putting her in danger by making himself bait? He knows how dangerous Bullseye is. Okay, fine, whatever. But then Bullseye does show up, and what is his plan?
Nothing!
So yeah, Vanessa gets murked with a little glass ornament of the city, which I'm sure is very poetic and symbolic. That being said, the scene itself was very well done, but having the perspective of being there on set, we ended the day with D'Onofrio's reaction to her death, and my God, we gave him the room as best we could, minimized the amount of people in his space because it's such an emotional moment for the actor. It's pretty common to do that if you don't know while you're shooting, if there's like a more sensitive scene going on that involves high emotions or like nudity, to try to clear out the room as best as possible, just as like a courtesy to the actor. But my God, once the cameras were rolling, the sounds this man was making, just absolutely wailing over her death. It was harrowing stuff. D'Onofrio is a brilliant performer. That's no secret, but to be in the room with that energy he brings to Fisk is next level. I wasn't even watching. I just heard the voices. I was working. All I did was hear his screams and his wailing over her dead body, and it's really powerful stuff. But then you get back to the editing, and I just knew they were gonna do this thing that they do in everything, where they show him screaming, but they cut out his voice. I don't know, in my opinion, that's a missed opportunity. So overall, season 2 so far has been pretty strong. Obviously I don't think it's on par with the Netflix series. I don't think it ever really will be, just kind of the nature of the show. But I do think it is a pretty big improvement over the first season. If I had to guess where the season's heading, that kind of depends on a lot of outside factors. And for context, this was pretty much the big episode that I worked on. I don't really know too much about the season going forward, so you don't have to be worried about me spoiling shit that's not out yet. But if I had to guess where the season's heading, that kind of depends a lot on outside factors, like beyond the show itself. Do they need to keep Matt in a relative status quo to line up with the Spider-Man movie and other projects that he might be in? If yes, then I don't anticipate anything too crazy. If no, I don't know, Shadowland, Devil's Reign. I'm not going to get into spoilers, and I'm not working on season 3, but I do know that they're filming right now. There are characters that show up in there that, if you don't know by now, are pretty obvious. I won't get into it just because it's kind of a leak. I know it's pretty unlikely and kind of asking for a lot knowing what we are getting in season 3, but I'd like to see Elektra back. I will say though, they are having Charlie Cox keep the beard, which makes me think that Matt's going to be going through it next season. We do know that Jessica Jones is coming up the next few episodes. Thanks, commercials. So I'm excited to see her again, and potentially more references to prior events, or, maybe some stuff we don't know about during that time skip in between the shows. I'm personally really excited to see their dynamic again. I think Jessica Jones is probably my second favorite Netflix series behind the Daredevil show. And I think Kristen Ritter's so perfect for that role, like 10 out of 10 casting. But anyway, what do you think of Born Again? Do you like the look of the show? Are there any characters you want to see that haven't returned yet? Do you think he's in the new Spider-Man movie? Probably, right? Like, they're not going to have Frank the Hand and not Matt. Come on now. Anyway, I promised a quick story, so here it is. I was there. Let me tell you my tale. It was a dark and stormy night. Well, not literally stormy, but the sky was charged with an energy more powerful than lightning. The electricity of production. I had been standing on the same street corner for about 5 hours. It was late on a Friday night, and I had been discouraging drunken New Yorkers from walking right into the middle of a scene between Matt and Karen. Everyone's out drinking, having a good time, except for me. Just know that whenever you see Matt having a gruff conversation with someone on the streets of New York, there are about 50 people holding off an ocean of New York City drunks from giving Daredevil a high five. That was me, I was one of those. Anyway, the flow of people had slowly turned to a trickle as more hours passed. Before I knew it, the sun was up, and that means we were done shooting. Hooray. I got there maybe at 2 p.m. the previous day and had worked all through the night, pretty typical in production. But needless to say, I was fairly delirious. I was looking forward to going home and sleeping through the day when I was given one last assignment. Take the film, some files, a few other things back to the production office, then you can go home. Okay. I was handed a bunch of stuff and hopped in a van. My eyes were fading. The van dropped me off. I went to unlock the office door, and that's when I realized what I'd been holding in my hand the whole time. It was a coat hanger with I unzipped the bag, looked in, and let me tell you, those were some of the finest double Ds I've ever seen. It took Herculean strength and willpower for me to not put the suit on and start somersaulting around the empty office. But it was cool. I got to hold the Daredevil suit. I got to touch it. It felt like a basketball. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed my dumb story. Check out my other stuff, and I'll see you next time.